So
Right?
let's see. Okay. Welcome to the Cougarland podcast. It's Teachers Kids Day. Me and Sean Stanton, another fellow teacher's kid. I think you're the first teacher's kid. Well, actually, Christy, she was on here. I had Christy Clegg, who's now Chris Bechtel.
Right. And then somebody had the Goldsteins. Didn't your brother have all three of the Goldstein boys on one time or something?
Yeah, my brother did. Yeah, the
Yep.
Goldsteins. That was a hit. A lot of people knew them. They were great guys. And
Right.
you hung out with them after school, right? Like you moved into the States with some of them and hung out for a while.
I spent a year in the Caribbean with Matthew in '95, and I used to hang out with all three of them. We would ride bikes to each other's house. And originally I was the same year as Andrew, but then I wound up graduating with Jonathan.
Wow. So it's interesting. You're out in the Caribbean now. Was there some special college there? You guys were going to learn something to take over the world, or what was the reason for that? You guys were lifeguards. What happened?
Well, I had just graduated from college. I went to University of Florida and graduated in '93, and was just hanging out in Gainesville for another year, just kicking around the college town, enjoying the college life without being in school, and was just getting ready to get my resume and my suit and go start looking for a real job. And my uncle had told me, Sean, you should try and travel a little bit before you settle down. And I'm like, how am I going to be able to do that? And he was living in St. Martin at the time. And he said, you can come down and see me, but he didn't have a visa. And so I would have to fly off the island every 30 days to get my passport restamped. And that sounded a little iffy. So I heard through the grapevine that Matthew and Bazil were living in St. Thomas, and that one of them was working at the Stouffer Renaissance. So I just looked up on the Stouffer website and found the number for the property there, and just called the front desk and said, hey, do you know Matthew Goldstein or Bazil? And they said, well, Matthew's working at the bell stand and Bazil is working at the front desk and he's here today. So I just got transferred and talked to Bazil, and he said, hey man, this is a great place to be. And you should come down and check it out for the season. And my landlord has a spare bedroom in the apartment, so think about it. And I was like, man, this is
Done deal. Done deal. You're
Yeah.
like, hey, Vicenza Part 2 on an island.
right.
The next
Yeah.
chapter, right?
Yep.
It's it was like one big reality show. I mean, you're used to different traveling and going to foreign places and just getting
Mhm.
down and just, you grow up, hey, let's go to Venice, let's go to Rome, let's go to Germany, let's go to Switzerland,
Right.
let's go to Spain.
Uh-huh.
Okay, San Martin, sure, why not? Not a big objection for kids that grew up like we did, right?
Right. They traveled a lot and just adapted to different environments and different communities, and
Where were you before Vicenza, and how old were you when you came to Vicenza?
I was born in Stuttgart, Germany. My father was Army, and then he got out when I was about 6 months old or something, and I moved back to Cincinnati, Ohio. And both my parents took turns going back to school to get their bachelor's degrees and their master's degrees, and they were both teachers. And my mom taught for Dodds when my father was in the Army before I was born, and they had decided that they wanted to apply to Dodds and they wanted to try and travel overseas, but they didn't say anything to me about it. And so apparently the year before we wound up going, they had applied for a job in Japan and got offered a job, but it was too late in the summer. And then, so I was living in Cincinnati, Ohio. I was about 11, and I came home the last day of 5th grade and went to throw my backpack in the corner and grab my baseball glove and go out and play baseball. And they called me in and said, Sean, we need to talk to you. Your mom got offered a job teaching overseas, and so we're moving to Italy.
Wow, that's it's funny because your dad was in the Army, and then you get that government job. I never said this, but my dad was an officer in the Marines, and then he had been already out, done his term, and was working as a director of athletics in New England, and then got a job teaching sports again, coaching, being a PE teacher. And he liked that better because he liked to be by the other job paid a lot more, but it didn't matter. He wanted to be where the game was because he loved sports, as you know. So, you rather do what you love to do instead of like, that's a nice salary. I'm working at the rice factory in charge of counting the rice. You're like, but I had bigger aspirations. I thought I was going to Hollywood. It's kind of like that. But yeah, so my grandfather told him, you should get a job with the government. My mom's family was originally from Europe and Germany. So he's like, take me back. I want to go back. So he's like, yeah, whatever. But consequently, the rest of the family, that when we'd come back to the States to visit, they'd think, oh, you're all the jet setters, even though they were making all kinds of money. We weren't anywhere near on their economic level. But
Mhm.
it's funny, because you lived in Europe, you were more exotic. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you
Yep.
had the same experience.
Yeah. I mean, when I tell people I grew up an hour from Venice, they're like, what?
Yeah, Venice Beach, California, right?
Right?
So you
Yep.
got there 11, so fifth grade going into sixth grade, pretty much.
Six. Yep. Yeah.
Who was your teacher?
Mr. Pellerito.
Oh, he was great.
So yeah, I mean, of the three, it was Pellerito or Benanti or Brune. So I mean, Mr. Pellerito was my sixth grade teacher. Yeah.
And
My
did you
first
get to
year
go
there.
to class in the snow too?
I did. Yeah, I remember. So I think that was pretty cool. And I have a lot of memories of skiing and going away on weekends and, Saturday ski buses and doing a lot of skiing in those days. So sixth
Look,
grade was pretty cool.
that's what's funny, because skiing is kind of perceived as an exotic sport to some, and you get to do it like it's playing hoops, like it's a regular thing
Mhm.
down the street.
Right.
So if you want to top off that story when you're talking to a stateside friend, yeah, I lived an hour from Venice. Oh, by the way, we had an exotic class in the snow trip in, sixth grade. Went up and skied for 2 weeks, had classes, ate European food up in a lodge in the mountains up in
Yep.
the Alps. And they're like, okay, dude, enough.
Yep.
So who have you run into? I mean, you ran into Brazil and Goldstein's.
Yep.
So who else have you kept in touch with or hung out with over the years?
I really haven't seen too many people since I left Vicenza. Chris Summers was in Gainesville when I got there. So he was like a senior when I was a freshman, and I saw him basically my first year in college. Heather Van Gordon and I went to college in Gainesville at the same time, and sort of kept in touch passingly on Facebook. And Matthew and Bazil and I lived together for a year in the Caribbean. But other than that, I really haven't kept in any sort of personal contact with any of the folks from Vicenza.
Isn't that amazing? Like, it's just like when you're there and people are just flying, going back to the world and going back to the States, all the
Right.
years you lived there. You were there for 6 years, basically, right? I mean, 6 through 12,
Yeah,
right?
and then my parents stayed there for a long time after. My parents were probably there for another 5 or 10 years after I left. So, because I was in college, Uncle Sam would pay for me to go back every Christmas and every summer. So I went back to Vicenza all, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year of college for summer vacation. And then my wife and I, when we were first dating, we flew. I went back with her the summer of '95, I think it was, for my younger sister's high school graduation. And she and I traveled around Europe for a month on the train. And so I think that was probably the last time I was overseas, was
You did the
95.
Eurail pass,
Yeah.
I almost did it. I did it a la carte. I didn't really do the full commitment. My buddy Mark Parkins and his brother and Mike Tolley, a few guys, they just went on a rampage all around Europe and
Right.
trying different beers and hostels and
Mhm.
Amsterdam, you name it, wake up and, oh, get off the train, fall asleep on the beach in Spain. I mean, that was the kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's enriched your life in different ways that you probably couldn't imagine. And a lot of the people, but it's amazing. Just like everybody went back to States, and you would, I lived there for 13 years. People come
Mhm.
in and they go. Your friends are gone. You don't have their number. You can't call them. You're that young where you're not going to really commit to be a big letter writer. Dear Bob, how is the States? Are you watching
Right.
HBO?
Mhm.
Are you
Yeah.
drinking Slurpees from 7-Eleven? Oh my gosh, I wish I was there. What's
Yeah.
the letter, right? And you get here and then you realize what you had. At the same time, there's new things to, feed your curiosity. So I don't know. I mean, I grew up there, at 3 years old in Germany, 5 years old in Italy, 19 years old, it was time to go. But
Mhm.
I'd go back to the States. And my dad was there till the late 90s. So my parents stayed there a long time. And it was hard. It was a very sought after billet, People wanted
Right.
to get that
Right.
European gig. And,
Yep.
you know, you get used to that as home. Did you ever feel like, where is home while you were living there? Because home was like, my parents are here. Where's home to go home to? Like the keys to the door
Yeah.
in Ohio or something? I mean,
No, I mean, my grandparents lived in Buffalo, New York, so we would go back to see them every 2 summers when it was our trip to go back. But because I lived in Italy from sixth grade through 12th grade, and that was pretty much my formative years. I mean, that's where I tell everybody I grew up in Italy. So I mean, everything sort of before and after. But because that was such a big chunk of my life, that's what I considered home.
Where did you live? Like, what part of off base did you live at?
We lived in Vigardolo, which was right over by like Cavazzale.
Okay.
So yeah, the Richies lived down the street from me. The Draculiches probably lived about 2 miles away. So, because I lived there for such a long time, I mean, I think I sort of gravitated and hung out with a lot of teachers' kids because a lot of us had been there for, a big long stretch. So, and I could,
Yeah.
ride my bike to and from work, or ride my bike to the Goldstein's house, or whenever we were going to go out for the weekend, just ride my bike to somebody's house and then just leave bikes there and figure out wherever. But yeah, we lived in a little Italian, countryside.
What a trip, right? That's like I went
Yep.
back. My parents lived at one part, and then when I came back on leave in the Navy, they had moved, and I was like, man, it's so great to be back. And I was living in California, I hadn't fully embraced California yet, but it was big nightlife, just big. San Francisco. Come back, I'm in Vicenza, which is a very tiny little town. You just don't realize it till you get older. You can shoot through it one side to the other, as my brother did. When he visited, he's like, I got in the car, you're on one side to the other in 10 minutes. So it's like, we don't go there anymore.
Right.
There's nothing to see, Hey, let's go
Right.
Monteberico, let's go here, let's go there. It's like a carnival. You remember being a huge grand thing, but you go back and it's got, the little horsey ride and the swings. And that's it. And the pinball machine. Oh man, we want a great America. So,
Mhm.
I'm out of here. But that's kind of how I see it. But being back there, waiting for a bus for an hour and a half in the countryside, I'm like, oh, take me back, man. I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
It
this is
was
simple
kind of
life,
funny. You've
Ride
stayed
your
in,
bike. Nobody had phones. Your parents would let you come and go as you please, and just
hopefully your friend had a good VHS movie you could borrow over the weekend
right.
because,
Or
wasn't
teachers
that
come back from the States with tapes of like Married with Children or The Simpsons or something, or like American commercials. That would be the sort of American pop culture that we would be,
right?
excited to
Right.
see.
Please just press record and let it run, man, and give me 8
Right.
hours of whatever.
Uh-huh.
What's new, what foods new, whatever.
Yep.
And it's funny because that was all artificial stuff, artificial food that we craved. And we were in Europe where we had the best of the best, but we didn't really appreciate it yet. It's kind of like artwork and culture and things you don't really get down on until you're older. You're like, yeah, I like it now, but it's like coffee. You don't give it to a 5-year-old; they're not going to like the taste.
Right. That's the thing. I told people, I would go on all these great field trips and go to all these amazing churches, and all I wanted to do was go back to the States and go to the mall and watch MTV.
Right.
But then the fact that I went back and traveled again when I was like 22 or 25 made me really appreciate, just the opportunity to have, that much culture and the diversity, and just, that it was a beautiful place to live. I told my girls I'd take them back, when they're a little older, when they're both like, late teens, early 20s, and spend a couple days in Rome and a couple days in Florence, and, so they'll get a chance to explore a little bit.
How do you think it's impacted your life? What has it given you? Like the way you look at things, or desire to travel or take advantage of things that you might be, one day, what is it?
I think it's given me a different perspective on American culture. The fact that I lived outside of it for so long, and sort of this stranger in a strange land mentality. When I come back and I'm like, because in Italy there's no drive-throughs in the entire country. And the entire place shuts down for 3 hours in the afternoon for everybody to take a nap. And then when I first came back, and there's like drive-through this and drive-through that and drive-through liquor store, and all these big honking gas guzzling cars, Hummers and Cadillacs and everything, and
Right.
it's different. I think it did give me because I'm not really geographically tied to one place. I mean, I know people that I know now that have never been outside the state of Georgia. And so because when I was looking at colleges, I applied in 4 or 5 different geographic areas. After spending a few years in Gainesville, I figured I'd take the opportunity to travel a little bit. So to spend a year in the Caribbean and some time in Key West, and I think really gave me an interesting about different cultures and different perspectives and languages. And also the good thing about northern Italy is you could be 3 hours away were 3 or 4 different countries. So I mean, you could go to you could go to Switzerland, or you could go to Germany, or you could go to Greece, or so I think that was really cool.
So you hung out with the Draculich brothers, like Hank and Bart, or
I spent time with Bart
Peter?
because he was the closest one geographically to me.
Yeah.
Peter Ritchie lived down the street, so he and I were the only 2 that lived in the same town. I spent a lot of time with Andrew Goldstein and Kyle Abbott, and then my senior year, probably Sam and Steffo and Tom Pratt, and my senior year, there were probably a group of about 8 or 10 of us whose parents were all civilians and had been Vicenza for a good length of time. So, I mean, I thought we had a pretty good crew my last year there.
Did you take any good trips? Do you have any memorable trips that you really enjoyed, either with the team or a band or a group, or like
I remember
team club?
we went to Model Senate. I think it was like my junior or senior year, where I think it was Mr. Kleb's speech and debate.
Mhm.
So there were like 8 or 10 of us that all took the trip up to Stuttgart for Model Senate. I remember when we went to Berlin. I think maybe you were on that trip when we went
Yeah,
to
I
Berlin.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when we went to East Berlin
teen
with the
club
teen
trip.
club.
Oh
Yeah, and it was
yeah.
like right around New Year's Eve or something. And so yeah, we did
You
that.
remember the
And
mischievous trip that was? Did you get caught with us in the Kudam?
I don't think so. No, I don't think I did.
You're like, oh, that's Len Dempsey. That's a naughty teacher's kid. Oh
Right.
man, I wanted, after going to Berlin, I loved it. I mean, we went
Mhm.
to the red light district. We went out to all these different malls, and remember they had that mall that had the special claim, like it gets food from anywhere. Basically, it's like saying Amazon fly something into your
Right.
house the next day.
Right. Yeah.
But there's the mall where you could get food from anywhere in the world,
Hmm.
and they did take us on some interesting tours. I remember that experiential, like the history of Berlin, where the lights would come on or the chandeliers would drop. Remember that kind of
Right.
thing that they took
Yeah, I
us
think
on?
so. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we went to a roller disco. I remember that
Okay.
too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you're like, I went to a roller disco. You don't admit it, right? You're kind of holding back. I see what you're
I
doing.
remember, skating rinks and Palladium, and like you say, I mean, you go to the club because that was one of the only places to hang out, or that would be where that was where the girls were going when you were a teenager, you'd sort of follow where they were.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like, just sniff out the good times. Like, where's the party at? Where's the fun at?
Right.
And, you get to do grown up stuff as a young kid. So how was it coming back to the States after you'd had all your freedom? I mean, Florida is not so restrictive. Like, nobody's carding you. And, if you're in
No,
college, it's like,
it was a big culture shock for me because Vicenza was such a small school. There were 53 people in my graduating class, and then I came back to UF, and there were 400 people in my freshman chemistry class, and just it was a huge school. And I sort of got lost. And originally, I was going to be ROTC. I had an ROTC scholarship, and I was going to be an engineering major.
mhm.
And then about a month into it, there's people falling out in formation because it's like 100 degrees in Gainesville in the middle of August, and I'm looking around going, what am I doing? I don't want to be in the Army, And then I was going to be an engineering major, and I, got bad advice from my freshman advisor, and so I bombed calc, and so I had to switch majors halfway through my freshman year. And Gainesville was a fun place to go to school, so I liked Central Florida, and
Kind of a party school, right?
it was, and
Right.
because my oldest now is 17, and she started to look at colleges, and I told her, I mean, I applied like University of Florida, University of California, Santa Barbara, University of Colorado, University of Vermont. I applied to like 4 or 5 colleges all around, and because we were Florida residents, because Florida has no state income tax, so that was sort of what did it for me. Was my parents said, well, you're in state of Florida, so that's where you're going to go. So
Makes sense.
yeah,
And
and
it's
it
the
was a
best.
big party school. I had this vision of I wanted to go to this big party college, and I think Florida made Playboy's top 20 or something, and so you know
Yeah.
watched the Gator football team, and went and traveled. I had grandparents in Sarasota too, so I mean, even though my parents were still overseas, I think it was important for me to have some kind of family nearby when I was in college.
What is with Sarasota? That is the grandparents' capital or something.
Yeah, there's
It is.
a lot of retirees in Florida and places south. I mean, well, it doesn't get cold there, and Florida has no state income tax, and so there's a lot of cultural stuff going on in the winter. So yeah, there's a lot of folks that still live in South Florida.
Have you seen any of the episodes? Anything like stoked memories, like took you back on like, because that's what I get from doing these things, And then when I listen
Yeah,
to it again, anything
just to
stoked you
see the
on?
Goldsteins was pretty cool, because like I said, I mean, I was contemporaries of all 3 of them at different times. I graduated with Jonathan. I knew Andrew really well. I lived with Matthew for a year. To see the Gibsons was kind of cool, because I remembered, I graduated with Bonnie. Amy was a year behind me. I remember David as the freshman, but he was all grown up. And just to see, people talk about and the little shots from the yearbooks, and for me to go and find mine, and just, that was a real, I've talked to friends that have just these sort of very vanilla memories of high school, or where they lived in one place their whole life. And for me to be
Yeah.
overseas and for us to be able to travel and have the freedom we went, and, I talked to my girls about, going to take a train to concerts, and they're like, well, don't miss the last don't miss the last train. Otherwise, you got to spend the night in the train station. I mean, with no cell phones, you know, and then my parents would let me and 4 or 5 of my friends go 5 hours away on a train at age 15 or 16, you know, with no cell phones was pretty cool.
That was freedom, untethered,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
And it's kind of changed like how people treat their kids these days. They're like, no.
Right.
You get them on GPS, basically. Get them on
Yeah. That's the same
right?
with my daughter or some of their friends. You know, you got to have them, you got to know where they are 24 hours a day or have this little tracking system on them. And I'm like, wow, I guess that's the reality of it now, but that's not how it was. You know, I mean, we didn't even have a phone for a couple of years. So you just sort of make plans to meet up with your friends, and you couldn't change them because you couldn't get in touch with them.
This was your Facebook and your
Right.
face. That was your book. That was the deal.
Yep.
It's interesting because I talked to Scott Lewis, who was there briefly. He played football. He
Right.
might have been in your grade or a grade above
He
you.
was. I think he was there like my freshman or sophomore year. I remember the face. I remember him being the big guy in the football jersey, you know, when I was a freshman or sophomore. Yeah.
Yeah. So I talked to him and he's like, I come back my senior year and it's not the same. And I thought about it. And what makes it different is, well, where do we meet for the game? Everybody comes on post. Everybody has an ID card. They either have breakfast at the snack bar or they go over by the bowling alley or they go, you know, to some chow hall or somewhere. They get some food. They're hanging out on post. And then they might go after the football game to the movie theater or the teen club for a dance or to play pool, you know, or to the bowling alley, whatever. Or let's all go to Villaggio. So the community followed the community around. You were part of this thing. And you know, as a teacher's kid, well, if you go to high school in the States, you show up at the game and then everybody goes to their house and they can be all different parts of the town and they're not preloading, hanging out at Denny's and this and that. In the olden days, maybe they had a place where they'd meet up, where they had the crews, get in their cars and cruise on a Friday night, you know, Saturday night, the old school stuff, or some roller rink. The States, it was roller rinks. That was the social thing.
Yep.
Now there's no roller rink. It's Xbox. Meet you on my headphones, you know?
Yeah, everybody's isolated and stays shut up in their houses. I mean, or even if we were going downtown to be like meet at the bus stop outside the front gate, you know, we'd all meet there at 6 or 7 o'clock and then head downtown for the night or wherever we were going to go.
But we knew if they weren't at one place, we could catch them at the other. Oh, they're not over here at this pizzeria. They're probably at the cab or they're probably over by the train station. So you knew the circuit, how to do that. And then eventually
spots, or the little downstairs. I think it was the cab that had the downstairs back room that they'd let all the American kids have on a Saturday night. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Did you
guys? The pizzeria down on the way to Villaggio, or
Oh yeah. Did you continue the bridge parties after me and Mark Parkins left? Because we used to have those bridge parties.
I think we had a couple. There were probably like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But my junior and senior year, we would hang out downtown a lot, or you know, house parties. That it's funny. Bonnie talked about like you know, the party at the Goldsteins. I remember the party at the Goldsteins, or you know, the party at Kyle's house, which you know, Christy Clegg posted pictures of like 6 months or a year ago, or you know, I had one at my house, or it'd be when, you know, when the parents were out of town, you know, you'd have to party at so-and-so's house, but like she said, you had to clean up afterwards, you know, or.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I had some ruffians over to one. I think they went out, they tipped a Cinque Chino on its roof and let it sit there. Yep. People come out, my car's on its roof. What the hell? I mean, it's like, you know, all drinking beer and playing tag in these fountains that were like multi-levels, like you could walk on the ledge and it's like pushing each other in this fountain that's in front of the Palace Sport. Just craziness. Good times. Mm-hmm. And you know, now that would be frowned upon, but you know, I don't regret any of it. I'm not here.
No, it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed it. You know, it was funny for me because I skipped 7th grade. I was there for 6th grade, and I guess Palorito thought I did real well on a bunch of my tests, and so he talked to my parents, who talked to my dad, tells me Sam Minetti or something, and then they decided that I was going to skip from 6th grade to 8th grade. So I mean, you know, my 8th and 9th grade years were kind of tough, you know, because I think about it at the time. I mean, socially that was really difficult. But, you know, by the time I got to be 10th, 11th, and 12th, I mean, I was pretty much in with my contemporaries. But, you know, that because when my daughter's in 7th grade now, and I'm like, I was never in 7th grade, you know, and so I was 15 the first 2 weeks of my senior year, you know, and graduated high school at 16. So that was, you know, that was another big part of my Vicenza experience.
You know, there's another guy I had on here, Harlan Calhoun. He was like 16 in his senior year. Mm-hmm. So it was like, he's like, hey, you know, I'm kind of a late bloomer here. I'm trying to fit in at my age group and my peers.
Right.
They're getting all muscled up or something, and I'm still growing. And hey, now I want to play basketball. What do you mean the game's over? Go back and play. So that
Yeah, I
that
mean,
was something that happens. But
right.
so you were probably at discos when you were 13, 14, and 15. There's a very
Yeah.
good possibility.
Yep. Yep.
Well, because you jumped a grade, I mean, that's what the kids were doing your age. And what's funny is kids did not keep doing what we were doing. Like eventually they just sit on post and probably log in and they're on phones and they're texting and it
Yeah,
takes
like it
away
is
the
with all
mystery.
teenagers now. You can't get them to disconnect from their social
Mhm.
media. So I mean, I think it was a great, I mean, era for us to, not have all those distractions and be able to just go and explore and hop on the train and go to the beach, or hop on the train and go to concerts, or go to Venice for the day, or just.
Well, you remember how everyone would be comparing stories on Monday, at the cafeteria or the snack bar or something, talking about what happened over the weekend. That was
Right.
our Facebook.
Yeah.
And
Two or
it
three
was
gathering places where everybody would be. And also one thing is, because our class was so small, we really didn't have a lot of cliques. Everybody sort of got along
they
with
would
each
if
other.
there was a clique, it would end up merging together at some point
Right.
because you'd
Yeah.
need somebody for whatever social skills or connections they had,
Yep.
and vice versa, because everybody had their little specialty. You know,
Hmm.
that weekend you have the house for the party. Oh, they're all your friends now, and
Right.
they stay your
Yeah.
friends, right? But
Or as far as racial diversity, the military is probably about one of the most blended, um, communities you can find. So the fact that there were a lot of, African American, people in my grade, or in, 4 or 5, but I mean, a lot of people that I knew as far as soldiers or families and stuff like that. So that was something that I never had to deal with or had experienced any racism until I got back to until I got back to the States and heard people, dropping the N word. And I'm like, what's that? Just because it was not a part of my experience growing up.
well, I grew up the same way. I went to California. It was pretty cool there, but there's other places you could have gone, and that's the thing. It's like Vicenza was neutral. It was happy. It was none of that. Nobody was jealous. Nobody thought anybody. It was
Right.
just you are who you are. We weren't even looking
Right.
at any of that differences.
Hmm.
And I was there the whole time. I saw that, and then I went back to the States. I'm like, whoa! So I know exactly
Yeah.
what you're talking about. It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. It was a beautiful environment. If the whole United States could grow up like, Vicenza, we'd have a beautiful
Mhm.
country. If you
Yep.
think about it, right? But what does it take for that? What's the dynamic? Separate them from where they are and build a common culture together in a foreign land. I guess that's what it takes. That's
Right.
right.
We all have to stick together because we don't know anybody else. I mean, that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know
Yeah.
what you just said, that kind of hits on the key. You make friends with people because you don't know anybody else, and because they're American and you're American, and you speak the
Right.
same language, and you have some of the same points of reference that your Italian buddy might not have. You
Hmm.
kind of value them differently over there. They can tell you about
Yep.
Detroit, New York, California, Texas, wherever they're from. And you're like, oh, tell me more. Tell me more. I want to know more about this place, because you're trying to figure out the big picture. At least that's how I felt as a kid living
Yeah.
there. But who else do you want to see come on here? Who's somebody I haven't had on? Kyle's potentially going to come on. I just talked to him.
Yeah, because Kyle and I lived together for a year or two in Gainesville. He was in community college and I was at the same time. So he and I were in touch my early 20s, and then I haven't seen him. So yeah, I mean, I followed him on Facebook, and I heard that he worked for UPS, works for UPS still, and just got married. And so that would be cool. I think you had Lisa Rolick, I watched a little bit of hers. The Rokas sisters, right? Because I remember Jenny
Mhm.
was my year, and I remember Christy was a year or two behind me, but she and I hung out for a while. And so, I mean, I think, 86 to 88, because those were the last couple of years I was there, and I knew a lot of people there. I mean, I think it's neat to see
Did you
people
go
from
to
that
the
area.
Lake Marola graduation party thing?
I don't think I did that year. I think my year, we went to Rimini for a senior trip,
Hmm.
and then I think maybe we did go to the Rod and Glen Club Lake. I don't know. I have fuzzy memories of some of the parties in high school. So
There were so many. I mean, you came to
right,
school, you were already tuned up. You're like, these guys are like, hey man, we're gonna party. You're like, done it before. It's cool.
right,
Just
yep,
relax, dude. Already did this.
yeah.
So yeah, it kind of like you walk into college and it's just a continuation. And
Yeah, I tell people that I grew up overseas with no drinking age, and they're like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Yeah, you could drink whenever, but you couldn't drive till you're 18." So that might have been, and like I think I heard Amy say, that was one of the reasons why I think our parents were, the fact that we weren't driving made it a little less, scary. Now that I have a teenager myself, but it was, yeah, it was a good time.
Your parents just let you run free pretty much? I mean, you obviously
Pretty
didn't go to
much.
school
Well,
to skip a grade. They probably go, oh, he's good. He's automatic.
yeah, well, and also because we were teachers' kids, because you were a teacher's kid, it would be kind of hard to get away with anything because they'd always hear about it. Or what I would do is I would sort of go and say, oh, well, I'm going to spend the night at the Goldstein's house, or because I lived sort of far out, I would, if I was going to go out, I would go and spend the night at a friend's house, and then I wouldn't have to come home until later on the next day. So that sort of is how I
I
handled
think you'll
everything.
be able to meet up with the Goldsteins soon. I think that would be fun for you. You ever thought about hooking back up with them? It's just like life gets in the way. Oh, I got to take care of this job. One more thing.
Yeah,
My
I
daughter's
saw.
soccer game. My
Yep.
my son's basketball game.
Right. I saw Andrew. I think Andrew was living in Los Angeles, and I went through Los Angeles on my way to Hawaii on my honeymoon, and like met up with him in the. We were there overnight, or met up in the airport or something. So I saw him briefly, but yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I know Matthew's still in New York City, I think, and Jonathan's somewhere up in New York, New Jersey area. So that would be.
They were
Nice
hanging
to
out
see.
on Sean's podcast together, so it'd be
Mhm.
cool to see them. I encourage it, man. I definitely encourage everybody to hang out. I met a couple. Hung out with the Stokes brothers on my drive across the states when I was moving out here to North Carolina. It was a blast. It was like, here, let's have some drinks. Boom, we're driving around in some go-karts like you're in Villaggio, man.
Right.
It just takes you back, and you're like,
Yep.
I'm a 50-year-plus-year-old dude in Villaggio. Whoa.
Right.
Why am I acting the same?
That teenage spirit brings back that teenage spirit,
Have you been to any of the reunions or no?
I think I went to one when I was in Florida, maybe 90.
Fort Lauderdale one?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, like in the
Yeah.
late 90s or something. I think I went to that one for the weekend. And I don't remember who I saw, but there were a couple people there. So that's the only one I went to because I was nearby that area at the time.
That's the thing. It's hit or miss. You might show up
Yeah.
and nobody from your grade was there. And the next
Right.
week you could show up. It's like I feel sometimes somebody from like class of 76 shows up and they know one person and they knew
Right.
of some of the people. But everybody gets along. Everybody understands. You instantly integrate with that culture. It doesn't matter if you're 10, 15 years apart. I enjoyed hanging out with people that, were 8 years older than me. It didn't matter to me. But it's funny. Like you could go there and you're like, hey, looking for my friends. It's like all the opposite. The class above you was there below you.
Right.
That turns out. But yeah, I definitely encourage you to do that. What is it that what is it like living in Florida compared to Italy? How would you compare the lifestyle?
Well, college in Gainesville was a big college town, and then I lived in Key West for 5 years. So
Pretty
Key West
place,
was pretty cool.
I hear that's beautiful.
What's that?
I hear Key West is beautiful.
Yeah, Key West is nice. It's sort of this funky little artsy town, and it's a real small town built around the seaport. And so we would ride our bikes everywhere we needed to go, and just get in the car once a week to go to the grocery store and do laundry. And I worked for Hyatt Hotels at the time, and was like a bartender at the little pool bar. And so that was really neat. We were just dating and had just gotten married at the time, so that was a nice place to be. Sort of double income, no kids. And then we were looking to buy a house and start a family, and Key West was not a place to do either of those things. And so, real estate is very expensive, and the majority of the peer group was middle-aged gay men. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just wasn't our peer group, and we were looking to, and the schools were a little iffy. And one thing I've learned about island towns is people that are sort of born and raised in island towns, that can be a little bit of a sketchy environment. So we moved to Sarasota because I could transfer with Hyatt. And so we lived in Sarasota from 2000 to 2006. And my oldest daughter was born there, and it was nice to be by the beach. And so Florida was a good place to spend a lot of time.
You don't want to give up the beach. Never.
It's hard. Well, you take it for granted, and you only go when you've got family coming to visit, or you go once in a while on your day off. And then when we were leaving Sarasota in 2006, I was like, oh geez. And then I would go to the beach every week, and walk on the beach for like a month or two, a day, once or twice a week. The last couple of months we were there, and it was nice. I really enjoyed the warm weather. That's the other thing. I see people that live like in the Northeast or Minnesota or something, and I'm not a cold weather guy. So I think this is
It makes sense to me. I mean, I just moved to the beach. I live in the Outer Banks. It's an island on the beach. I live on the beach.
Right.
The sand is probably 3 minutes walk if you walk slowly. You know, it's 70 yards. It's not a 3-minute walk. It's less than that.
And I think I also decided I was more interested in where I lived than what I did, you know, and so that's why, I mean, I was in a hotel restaurant for a long time because I lived in resort towns. You know, when you live in St. Thomas, that's the only industry there is. And when you live in Key West, that's the only industry there is. And so to be able to have the opportunity to live in some geographically beautiful spots, you know, was a lot of fun, as long as you play tourist on your days off and take the time to appreciate it. Because otherwise, living in a resort town can be very hectic, you know, because cost of living is really high. And,
That's funny because I visited, who did I visit? Mark Parkins and I met up in Maui. And Mark was living there, working as on a boat, working as a surf instructor, just having fun, hanging out on the island.
yeah,
And I'm coming over there as Mr. Businessman, running my condo, and all his people, all his buddies, surf instructors, all the locals that are like working the trades, the cooks, the chefs, they all came to my condo because I had food and I had a cool condo.
right,
And they're getting their grub on, and all they did was talk smack about the tourists the whole time.
right.
I'm like,
Yeah,
not him, but I go, tell your friends to fuck off. Yeah, we're
right.
good now, right?
Yeah,
You know, it's they were in that. This was in Maui, right?
yeah. Maui's beautiful. Yeah, I went there. I went to Hawaii twice and and that's the thing about resort towns is I call it island fever. It's fun to live there for about a year and a half, you know, and then after a while you go to the same places and you do the same things and it's really expensive and you're like, okay, I miss being able to go to like a ball game or, you know, I mean, this was before Amazon. So as far as like places to shop or places to get, you know, things, and it was
Now you can get things anywhere. You can live in BFE and just, you know.
now, yeah, get one touch ordering and it comes to your house in 2 days, you know. Yeah, but that's not like it was in the you know in the 95 when I lived in St. Thomas.
Wow. So you did the thing. I mean, you know, my wife even worked in the resort business for a while. She worked at the Four Seasons up in Jackson Hole, up in the
Mm-hmm.
ski resort area. She came here. She's Russian. That's like when how you get here, you try out, come here as an intern. So a lot of people from European countries and South American countries come here and work at the resorts initially, and then try to get their student visa and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I've heard a lot about it, and it's also seeing the other side, you know, seeing what it's like on the island thing. But you do get to live like Mark Dickey does something actually similar. At least he did for a while. He was managing the golf course for some very
Yeah,
high-end resorts, like 6-star, not
in
5-star. Like,
Italy or something, right? Isn't he living in Italy still managing those? So
yeah, he's in Sardinia. So that's the Emerald Coast. It's a beautiful place, but that is where the who's who go. I mean, hotel rooms were like 16 grand a night at the hotel.
wow.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was entry level because it's like it was an exclusive club. It's kind of like Chateau Marmont in Hollywood. That's where the
Mm-hmm.
movie stars go. So it's 3 or
Right.
5 times more than it is down the street at the Standard or some other trendy hotel.
Yep.
You know, so
Yeah.
yeah, I traveled a lot. Know the hotel business. So you're out of the hotel business now or the resort business?
I am. I work for Target now.
Oh, cool.
So I live in Cumming, Georgia, which is about an hour north of Atlanta.
Mhm.
So I lived in St. Thomas with the Goldsteins with Skippy and Matthew, and we were there for about 6 months. And I got hit by a hurricane, and they said no electricity for 4 months, and we would have to leave the island because the landlord was going to take back the house. And then we moved to Key West because we knew somebody. My wife and I knew somebody. She worked on sailboats, so we lived in Key West for 5 years. And then we were looking to buy a house and start a family, and Key West is not the place to do those things. So we moved to Sarasota. I was looking to get out of the restaurant business because I had some habits, some bad habits I needed to get rid of, you know. And so once I, you know, quit the drinking and drugging and all that, I realized that
The
was not
Anthony the Anthony Bourdain life.
right.
As he
Yeah.
describes it, if you ever read the book about how he's working as a chef and it's all about partying and eating the best food and wine at night,
Right.
going to each other's restaurants, hooking each other
Yeah,
up.
I mean, and I
There's
was
that
the
lifestyle,
bartender
right?
for 5 years, so it was, you know, one for you and one for me, or you know, you'd get off work with a pocket full of money, and you know, at midnight and go out till 2 or 3, and then I was managing a breakfast and lunch restaurant at the time, and I was looking to get out of the restaurant business, and a woman that worked for me knew somebody who worked for Target, so I interviewed for a job at Target, and I've worked for Target since 2006.
Well, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so I'm almost 15 years now. So I was able to transfer with them from Sarasota to the Johns Creek area where I live now, and I'm the grocery manager for a Target about an hour north of Atlanta.
So you get the grown-up job. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not too far from me. You're not too far from me. I think I drove through Atlanta to get here. There's a lot of alumni in Alabama,
Uh-huh.
and there are some alumni in Georgia. And
Yep.
I
I
hope to
think
make a
I
big.
think Kelly Tranum actually lives about an hour from me in Marietta. Although she and I haven't spoken, I've seen a lot of her posts on social media.
No, that's the thing. If you don't have the conversation on here, when are you guys ever going to talk? They're
Right.
like, well, I assume this, and you posted this, and it's like,
Yeah.
it,
Yep.
I find that it's just it's show and tell, but who are you is different. And what we all have in common is we all lived on the big Euro trip vacation together with
Hmm.
strangers who became family. We didn't go
Right.
on the family vacation. We went on the stranger vacation that became family. That's what I think, that whole evolution was,
And also, I think one thing that helped us as far as teachers' kids is because
Mhm.
we had been there for a long time and we knew all the local hangouts. As new people would sort of start to come, they would connect with us and we would sort of take them where where the good places to go were. And so
Right.
while we were not military and didn't move every 3 years like most of them, I mean, we had a lot of friends that sort of came and went over the course of time as their time expired. And when my friend Tom Pratt lived with me the first half of his senior year, our senior year, because his family was leaving and he didn't want to leave yet. So I mean, that was,
You guys sponsored him, right?
yeah. Or you just let him stay. He stayed with us for a couple months to finish out the semester, and then he left at Christmas break, I think it was.
That's tough to make that transfer that year. You want to graduate
Yeah,
with your
senior
friends,
year. I
right?
know. That's one thing my mom said. My mom was, her father was Marines, and she went to 3 high schools in 4 years. And so she said, that she would not do that to my sister and I. And so, I mean, we stayed, in Vicenza pretty much for a long time. And then my parents actually moved to Gitmo after they left Vicenza.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting choices.
Well, it's funny because they were in Gitmo when there was nobody there. They were there before it became the Black Ops detention center, and so before they know it, there was all this stuff going on, down at the other end of the base. So,
We'll just buy a house in this field. Oh,
right.
It's a laser weapon factory now. No, but it's kind of how it works, right? That's
Yep.
that's interesting. So the adventure life, the Anthony Bourdain life, that's pretty cool, man. I understand the restaurant business, not from working in it a lot, but being a bouncer here and there, being around the life, walking into all the clubs, having all the connections,
Right.
knowing all the cooks. That was fun.
Yeah.
So then you get your grown-up job finally. Something said, hey, target, neutral, get away from
Well, yeah. Also, I mean,
we don't want to get like Surfer Sean to come out. No, I'm kidding.
well, and also, I mean, I had just gotten married and I was, thinking about having kids, and I'm like, okay, I need a stable job and I need insurance and all that stuff. And so I remember, when I turned 30, I was like, oh my God, I'm 30 now and I'm management. I'm driving a station wagon and I've gotten so establishment, I mean, my youth is over.
It's not over, but
No.
but I do understand, when you commit to the corporate for the better good of your family, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's what it is. Benefits. That's the key word here. Benefits.
Yeah. Health insurance and stability, and and also the thing about this area is, there are great schools and a lot of activities and great parks, and so it's a really great place for the girls to grow up. Whereas the Key West or Sarasota were both kind of.
I think Judy Say lives down in Georgia, and so does Joanna Clateau. She kind of lives close to there too, or south.
Yeah, I remember her. Yep. Yeah, she was in
Right.
my senior class. Yeah.
Yep. So they're both there near you. You get some of your old homies. I think there's more. From North Carolina on down to Florida and Alabama, you get a lot of Vicenza Cougars and Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So because a lot of people get government jobs, that's where their dad's last duty station was, or their mom's,
Right.
and that's where they went.
Where the roots are, yeah. Where like I said, everybody's got to have a state of residence, and that's sort of where I think a lot of people migrated back to. Maybe because it was cheaper for college, but maybe it's just because the people had family in that area, and.
So you like it? You like Georgia? You're like, okay, I miss the ocean. I'm close to it, but I'm not there. How long of a drive is it?
It's about 5.5 hours to get to Orange Beach, Alabama. I told the girls, my oldest is 17 now, and my youngest is 13. So I told the girls as soon as they graduate high school, I'm going back to the beach, so I could go back to Orange Beach, Alabama, right there by Pensacola, or Sarasota back on the Gulf Coast. And so, I mean, but I like it here because you're an hour from Atlanta, where if there's a lot of culturally stuff to do, and there's a lake right here, so you can get out on the water. And then the Georgia mountains are 30, 45 minutes away. So if I want to put on the Bob Marley and go hike the trails, you know, I can get out on the.
That's pretty cool. See what happened to what are teachers' kids going to be when they grow up? Who knew?
Yeah.
Right. We haven't had the Brown sisters on here. You knew the Lisa and, you know, her sisters, right?
Tracy and Kitty was a little over. Yeah, at least it was my year. Yeah. And, but that's what I tell my oldest, who's a junior in high school now, and she's trying to figure out where she's going to be. And I'm like, you know, you're going to change your mind a bunch of times, you know? And so, I mean, if you told me when I was 16 that I was going to, you know, run off to the Caribbean and then wind up working for Target for 15 years, I thought, no, you know, I was going to, you know, be an engineer and then go to law school, you know, but so that's why it's kind of cool to see somebody like Jonathan, you know, who had, you know, flight posters in his room when he was 15, and God bless him, he's flying jets, you know. And then Matthew and I had our Caribbean travels, and now I think he's still working for Stouffer as a bellhop in Times Square. I think he's still in the New York City area, but just to see, you know, and I didn't even know about the Gibsons, you know, that a couple of them are still in Europe. So it's also neat to see that a lot of, you know, people that have wound up staying in Europe, because at the time I didn't even think that was an option. You know, I thought Americans couldn't stay in Italy. So that some of them have been able to stay in Europe, I think is pretty cool too.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if you knew Johnny Kilhut. He would bounce in and out, right? And he came back. Now he has my dad's old job. He's the PE teacher.
In Vicenza?
Yeah. He was a volleyball. He was coaching volleyball over there. He was in the Air Force and he coached volleyball.
I remember, yeah.
And then finally he took the throne, you know, the full time. I'm like happy to see that it stayed in the family in a way. You went to school there and you came back.
Right.
There's a podcast with him and Sean, and like a New Year's Eve thing. It's pretty fun.
You
know, so yeah, you get to know my brother probably more than you get to know me because you guys were there longer.
Right. And I remember, like, you think you were a year ahead of me, and you see you and Mark on the team club trips. And I think I went to the trip we went to Athens.
Oh yeah.
And I went to Crete with the team club. And so, yeah, I mean, a couple of those trips, you know,
we were on the cruise ship. We were on the cruise ship, right?
Yeah, on the top going over there. Yeah, where you spent like 5 days getting there and then a day and a half in Crete and then 4 or 5 days back. But yeah, I mean, that was, you know,
that was a blast.
That kind of, yep.
I like that. The water was so pretty. They had me lifeguarding, and little did they know I had a big thermos full of gin. But it's all good. You know, I did it my way. I got in some trouble over there. I think I almost get in a fight with Vern. I told him I was going to beat his ass.
Yep, I remember Vern. Yeah.
I'm such a nice.
I was watching that one too, about when they ran out of money and they stayed for 2 weeks or something, about that whole story. I don't think I went that year, but when I heard about the backstory of that team club trip, I'm like, oh my Lord.
Like he misappropriated their funds. And here's this guy. I'm going to show you. And I'd been getting a lot of brawls. I was in high school, but I get in fights with GIs. I wasn't afraid of Vern. He didn't understand that. He thought he could just be, I'm the team club. I'm like,
I'm the grown up. Yeah.
Don't pull rank on me, buddy. So he stayed away from me.
Yeah.
And it's just being a kid. Like, stop it. I've had enough of you authority figures. I really liked it because on that trip, we went up to, remember the traditional Greek meal we had? We went up in these hills, and then they had the dancing and the food, like a total buffet.
Right. Kind of thing, cultural experience for the youth to understand.
And then I snuck out of there with Mark Parkins and found a Ouzo bar down the street.
Yep.
So that's kind of how you treated it. But my brother was on that trip. I think Mark was on that trip. Mike Mitchell was on that trip. You know, so you knew those two. You were on the trip. Kevin Merritt was on the trip with his girlfriend Dabney at the time. Tina Muya, I don't want to say her last name. She was on the trip too, and she lives in Florida. I think I see her pop up on Facebook.
Now, wasn't she in Verona? Is she the one that she was in Verona?
Yeah, she's a Verona girl. Yeah.
Yeah, with like curly hair. I think she was like a year or so behind me or something. Yeah, I remember her. Yep.
There was her, and I'm trying to think who else that I can remember from the trip, because it was just a good time, man. I mean, that was a party. I had a great time. So you're bringing back the times to me. Usually I'm bringing it back to everyone else. You got me set up. I'm like, hey, party in Greece in my head. But it's, I hope to bring some more of your friends on here. And the big thing I wanted to announce in the beginning, which I didn't, is that we have a new website. I'm kind of taking this thing off of Facebook because, first of all, if I post a video, it doesn't go to everybody. It kind of sits there, like the algorithm only goes to 10% of the people, and more people want to see them. They don't even know that it's out.
Right.
You know, and just the whole getting bombarded with garbage and ads and all that stuff. I'm like, I'm like trying to talk to my friend here. Bing, 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 bing. I'm like, no,
Right.
let me get out of here, dude. So the new website, you know, I put a link all over the Facebook page. You haven't checked it out yet, Sean, have you?
No, I tried to pop the link this morning, but it was sort of lagging on me, so I didn't have time.
Oh,
to
it probably took a minute. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I check it out. We got over 50 something people on there. You can send people instant messages. You can post stuff. It's not like Facebook where everyone's looking like, what kind of dog does he have? What kind of car does he drive?
Yeah.
It's nothing like that. It's just your face and, hey, what's up? And talk to your old friends and has instant.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome to try and connect, because I mean, I know some people that still have friends from high school. And the fact that I have, you know, this was such an important, you know, developmental period in my life. And then I haven't seen or talked to most of these people in 20 or 30 years. As you start to see people pop up on Facebook, or, you know, as you start to see people do these interviews and they're like, hey, well, here's so-and-so. And, you know, I remember when they were 15 and now look, they're all grown up and this is where they live and this is what they're doing and this is what their family looks like. So it's kind of cool to be able to, you know.
It's kind of funny because you're like, oh, there you are. And I would talk to you, but I won't. It's like, here's what I learned, Sean, is that my parents or my mom, you know, people that knew a lot of people there, they didn't talk to each other for 10, 20 years. Because, well, what are they going to call? They never call. Well, you're not calling. You know what I mean? So nobody, nobody takes initiative, and it perpetuates over years. Next time you talk to them, you hardly have a connection because it dissipated. Even though you have one, it didn't marinate, it didn't grow, it didn't blossom, you know, it didn't come to any fruition here, right? So that's what I noticed about this. I noticed that, you know, if you don't stay in touch, you had a great group of friends. Why discard them? Why throw them away? Right. These are people that have the same formative years, the same hard drive that you do, the same operating system, you know, that have that special thing. You can't relate to your neighbor next door.
Yeah,
talk to them about going to the Cap and, you know, going to the Palladium or going on a train, you know, to Rome or whatever, right? You can't just, they'll be like, oh yeah, my parents did it. They were there for 3 days. You're like, that's nothing. Scratching the
surface. Yeah.
Right.
Riding the tour bus is not the same, you know.
Right. Riding the tour bus is exactly. When you're in your dad's Fiat and it gets a flat tire halfway through Padova, then you know what it's really all about, right?
And it's funny because we were teachers, we would have every summer off, you know, and so my dad would throw me in the little Volkswagen camper and go travel all over the place. And I remember him trying to teach me how to like read a Paris subway map, and I was like 15, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But then when my wife and I had first started dating and I took her back to Europe, and I'm like, come, let me show you, let me travel. And she's like, oh, you know how to navigate. You can speak a little Spanish and you can speak a little Italian. And I'm like, hey now.
Right. She's like, oh my gosh, your studliness is just growing.
Yeah, right.
The longer we get married.
Major cool points. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to go buy you a leather jacket. I just didn't realize how cool you were.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome, man. And I appreciate you coming on here. And, you know, I hope you get on the site. Send people a message. Send your friends a message. Don't be like Facebook where we don't talk to each other. Like, what's up, dude? Yeah. Oh, how you been? You know, how's your family? Whatever. And you'll find that reconnection, because all we got right now on the internet is bullshit fake news. And I'm not picking either side. I'm just talking about all of it is divide and conquer news from every side you can think of. And censorship.
Yep.
I just want people to have a regular ass conversation. Forget the BS.
An authentic personal connection, you know?
Right. So that's why I built the site. Yeah, I got the video hosted on YouTube, but at the same time, who knows what happens with all this stuff that's going on? I might have to get my own server and host everything, and I will, and it won't be another big brother name,
right?
Because I'm looking at the architecture, right? And just to communicate clearly is becoming a difficult thing for a lot of people. Facebook had you believing you were in touch with your friends, but were you really? No, you weren't even talking to them like you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Like you never thought in shit. What is it? 86, I was there. So, 2001, what is that? Man, 35 years that you'd be talking to Len Dempsey on a computer.
Right.
And why even Len Dempsey? I knew him. He was an older kid. We didn't hang out all the time.
Right.
Dads knew each other. I don't know if I'll ever talk to that guy.
Right. From the Officers Club, happy hour at the O Club,
Oh my God. Yeah. The happy hour at the O Club. You know what's up with that. That was the thing I didn't go back into, is that we had all the parents, they'd have the teachers' parties. The Richies were usually the center hub. They get everybody have that Christmas party for the teachers. at the
Yep.
cafeteria. We'd have the whole school to
Mhm.
ourselves. Oh, that was
Yep.
great. They had the good food there. That was
Uh-huh.
wonderful. You know, so there'd be some of them, and you'd pop into their houses. Like, you had automatic babysitters. Mom, Dad, I want to go to so and so's house.
Yeah.
And mom and dads are like, hell yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Me and your mom are in Europe together. We could go to,
Right.
you know, do some tour, drink some wine and stuff, and then come
Yeah.
back and grab a book
Right.
like we're grading homework and act all serious around you, right?
Yep.
Your dad became a teacher there too, right?
Yeah, they were both kindergarten teachers. Yeah, they were both wound up teaching kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they just enjoyed it. They just had a great time. They
Yeah.
didn't have to grade any crazy homework and deal with
No.
any unruly mean
Right.
kids.
Keep them occupied through the day, and that was it. You know, you go home and you're done.
Wow. Yeah, that's the kind of experience, man. I was just in Europe not too long ago. I was in Portugal and Spain. I loved it. I stopped traveling at 22. After in the Navy, I toured all over the Pacific, all over Asia and the Middle East, and already did Europe growing up. And I'm like, I'm done. I meet my wife and she's like, we got to go get a passport. It's on. I'm like, what? Okay, fine. I can't deny you this and say, I already did that. I don't want to watch that movie. I already saw that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Then I realized what I was missing out on, you know, and I really enjoyed going back and experiencing the culture and so many familiar things. It was just like a big acid trip. You're hallucinating into another region in your mind.
Yeah, and just now that we've been there before and know it's there, I mean, it's a great vacation, you know what I mean? Because like I told the girls, I'm like, we'll just fly in somewhere, you know, don't bring more than you can carry in a small suitcase. You know, we'll hop on the train, we'll find a, you know, 1-star hotel right by the train station, and we'll go exploring, you know, because that's one thing it's really taught me, is that wandering spirit. You know, I mean, I don't like to take cruises. I don't like to take tours. I mean, I like to learn about a place and know and go on my own and explore, because that's,
you don't want the
how I
tour
learned
bus.
growing up.
You don't want to be on the tour bus.
Right. I mean, if I see some place, I want to be able to go back the next day, or I want to be able to read and explore and, you know, do what I want to do, as opposed to just, you know, go here and go there and you got to be back by 3:00 in the afternoon. No, you know, I mean, that's not
It's kind of funny. You came from living in Margaritaville with Jimmy Buffett.
right.
Now you're at Target.
Back to the real world. Well, it's funny, you know, because
Jimmy Buffett doesn't have any high school girls in that song that he's raising. So, right, let's go on.
So yeah, but because we were, you know, between 25 and 30, I mean, we had 5 years just to travel and go explore, and we went to Hawaii twice, and we lived in Key West, and we had all that stuff. And so now, I mean, I know some people had their kids earlier, you know, and so now they're empty nesters, and now I'm 50 and my daughters are 13 and 17. But I mean, it was really nice to be able to have those kind of adventures and that kind of free time, I think, when I was young, before I had kids, because it made me a better parent now.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to wait till you retire and you're old?
Right.
Some rickety bones. I'm
Yeah.
68 years old. I got all the time in the world. Oh, okay. Trying to hit the golf ball.
Right.
And there
Yep.
it is there. And you're like,
Yep.
I wish I did this when I was young, virile, and exciting.
Yeah.
What am I doing
Yeah.
here? Is a loaf of bread walking down a sidewalk.
Right.
You know, it changes. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
like
not.
I said,
I'm not critiquing your choices, man. I was in the
No,
Navy.
not at all. But it was,
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely nice to be able to have the journey and to have the adventures and explore a little bit. You know, I mean, to have that gypsy lifestyle. You know, when I was first, you know, 22 and right out of college. So it was, you know,
That's the way. That is the way to go. You got to go experience life. I'm sure that if you get a corporate job and you stayed in a cubicle and you never went anywhere,
right.
you're waking up. You're trying to get to a number, a 401k at a number, a
Right.
retirement year at a number, a mortgage
Looking for
payment
more
at a
stuff.
number.
Maybe this will be happy. Maybe I'll be happy when I get this much stuff, or when I get this number, when I get this job. You know,
I'll be
It's
happy
about
when.
experiences.
I'll be happy
Right.
when. I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds and I get a new quarterback and I get more muscular, and then everything's perfect. No.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. There's probably people living in I'll be happy when COVID is over. You can be happy
Yeah.
now. You can hack the system.
Happiness is wanting what you've got, you know,
Right.
and being grateful for what you have. Yep.
That's pretty awesome, man. Well, I think we share the same philosophy on that. And you know, I was no tame teacher's kid. You know, we all had our fun. And I don't know if you remember Peter and his really wild handlebar motorcycle. It looked like
Oh
some
yeah.
unicorn
Yep.
motorcycle. Yeah. I ran into him out in San Francisco. Haven't seen him in years.
He was quite the character growing up, believe me.
Oh yeah. He was always looking for some fun or some mischief.
Yep.
But yeah, man, it's so great to see you, and I hope more people reach out to you. And on the new website, don't I sound like I'm selling something here? For
That's it.
$9.95.
Time for the hook.
Oh, for $9.95, you can buy it now. ShamWow. No, I'm
Right.
kidding. But yeah, there's the link. It's in the description.
Yep.
I'm putting this on Facebook. More people will see it. More people will say, "Hey, Sean, I too, I joined a tribe of people. We wandered the earth drinking." No, I'm joking.
Right. But yeah,
That's awesome, dude. I appreciate you coming on, and I hope
thank you very
more of
much.
your alumni come out and reach out to you.
Definitely.
You know, that's awesome, dude.